Job chapter 1. You know what? It's debated whether Job ever lived or not. Some scholars think he didn't. And it's debated on who wrote Job. A lot of these scholars are probably obviously not believers, but they would think that it's just a fairy tale story, a story that is supposed to bring emotion to you and move you in some way, and we don't really know who wrote it. But in my Bible, it says in Job chapter 1, verse 1, and I tell you, if you believe in John 3:16, then we better believe in Job 1:1. It says here, in the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. That's all we've got, honestly. Do you believe that there was a man by the name of Job? Absolutely. They also feel like, and this one I agree with, that Moses probably wrote this book. I agree with that one. But it's not written. It's not documented. I tell you what, I'm going to save you guys me reading this story, but this is homework for each and every one of you. Please go home, and for your devotional for this next week, if you can't read a whole chapter, that's fine. Read a part of it. But what a compelling story of Job. Job chapter 1 and Job chapter 2. Now, once he gets beyond that, all it is this argument. It's a debate between his three friends and him. And it's just back and forth. He said, then Job said. And then he said, and he said, and he said. Then Maynard said, and then Jason said, and then Job said. And it was just back and forth of this argument of who God really is. Why would he do this to you? How many don't know the story of Job? Job, that'll put you on the spot. I didn't mean to do that. So basically, I'll narrate it. I was going to read it all, but let's see if my memory serves me okay. And I've got enough preachers in the house that they'll straighten me out. You want me to read it? Beck wants me to read it. Oh, okay. All right. Listen, verse 1, follow me real close. This story, when you actually read what he went through, is absolutely incredible. I want you to get it. And I want you, as I read this story, not just say it, I want you to go and be there with him. Okay? This is about 500 years before Abraham, so about 2,000 years before Christ, really. It was in that, he lived 120 years. So listen closely. In the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright, and he feared God, and he shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. That's 10, last time I checked. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, so take that times 2. That's 1,000. And 500 donkeys, and a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. He was by far and large the wealthiest man on the planet. He had everything that you could possibly want on earth. His sons used to hold feasts in their homes on their birthdays, and they would invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. So they had parties, right? Can we agree on that? That they would get together and have parties. And when a period of feasting had run its course, after they were done, because they didn't have to go to work, we have people like that today. Anyway, okay, I'm getting way off track. When a period of feasting had run its course, Job would make arrangements for them to be purified. Early in the morning, he would sacrifice a burnt offering for each of them, thinking, perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. This was Job's regular custom. So he would, after his kids were done partying, he would then go in and make sacrifice and atonement for what he thought they may have done in these parties, right? But on verse 6, one day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. And the Lord said to Satan, where have you come from? And Satan answered the Lord, from roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it. Now this was millennials before Jesus actually walked on the earth, and he said that there is an enemy that walks to and fro. He roars like a lion. It looks like to who he could kill, and destroy, right? So this is the same guy. This is the same Satan. Satan answered the Lord. He's going throughout the earth, going back and forth on it. And the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. And here comes Satan. Yeah, but does Job fear God for nothing? Satan replied. Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? Look at this guy. He's got everything. He's got more than anybody else in the world. Why wouldn't he love you? Why wouldn't he be devoted to you? Why wouldn't he go the extra step in sacrifices and atonement for his kids? Because you've blessed him. You have blessed the work of his hands so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, very well then, everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a finger. Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Verse 13, everybody still there? Yeah, you still there? One day when Job's sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine, they were having another party. Now, this time they were at the oldest brother's place. A messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and the Sabeans, they attacked and made off with them. They put the servants to the sword. How many know that means they killed everybody there? I'm the only one who has escaped to tell you. Now, what do you think Job was going through about this time? Are you honestly saying that all my oxen and all my donkeys are gone? I mean, that had to be a bloody mess, right? But they took them. But the servants that were taking care of them, they killed all them? What? And can you imagine the dialogue he's having with this guy? Are you sure? Are you sure come on, you're the only one that made it back? I'm the only guy that survived. The rest are all dead, and all of your animals were taken. They plundered them. While he was speaking, verse 16, another messenger came and said, the fire of God fell from the heavens and burned up the sheep and the servants. I'm the only one who has escaped to tell you. And by now, Job's going, what's going on here? We don't have CNN back then. We didn't have Snapchat, no Instagram, no Facebook. There's nothing like that. Job is trying to get a visual of what's going on. He's trying to get a handle of what's going on. While he was speaking, this is the third one now in verse 17. Another messenger came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on your camels and made off with them. They put the servants to the sword, and I'm the only one who has escaped to tell you. And Job was seeing a pattern here of deep, incredible loss and suffering. Can you imagine what was going through his mind? And yet, while he was speaking, verse 18, yet another messenger came and said, your sons and daughters, they were in that party. They were having a party. They were feasting and drinking wine at your oldest brother's house when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert, struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them and they were dead. And I'm the only one who has escaped to tell you. If my calculations are correct, he only had 4 servants left and 4 people plus his wife that he really cared about. At this, Job got up, tore his robe, that picture right there, shaved his head, and he fell to the ground in worship. And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away, and the name of the Lord be praised. Here's a verse that I trust I can say. This is my prayer, and it's my desire that all of your prayer. In all of this, Job did not sin, and he didn't charge God with the wrongdoing. In other words, he didn't blame God for all of the things that were happening in his life. And I know, John, you just spoke about it. We just prayed for you. The loss that some of us have. Frida, I know we're going towards the end of the year, and this all becomes real to you guys. I understand the loss of loved ones and the loss of things, and these are painful things, but can we walk through them with our head held high in the grace that God supplies for us? we're not done. In chapter 2, on another day, I'll ad-lib this because I want to get to where I'm going. You can turn to Job chapter 42. Okay? And this is the key. This is what this whole service was set up to do this morning, and we already did it. Job then in chapter 2, he gets sick. God strikes him, it says, with boils and afflictions from the bottom of his toes to the top of his head. And this past summer, you guys know, I still have a mark here on my forehead, and I actually had a bigger one on my back. Becky said I can't use this term, but I thought I was going to die. And I only had one at a time. I was flat in bed. It was the week that we had our church picnic. I told Beck I would have to get better to die. I was so sick with one. This guy was covered from his toes to his head. Can you imagine? After he lost everything he had worked for, and after he had lost his family, all of his kids, then he gets sick yet because Satan came back and he made a deal with God, said, yeah, but, I took everything and he's still faithful to you because God said, did you consider my servant Job? Again, he said it. It's like he's testing, he's willing to test Job because he knows of the faithfulness that Job has. Does he know that about us? Are we in that list? Are we on that list of absolutely going through the most suffering that we could possibly go through? And you know what? Staying faithful to God. Job did. Through his brokenness, he stayed faithful. He stayed faithful. His wife was on the sidelines and she was mocking him and she said, Job, everything we work for. You know what? Can you imagine the dialogue between him and her? Can you imagine what that conversation was like? I bet it got pretty real. Job, because of that, your belief is what we're doing. This is why we don't have anything anymore. I don't have any service to help me. I don't have anything anymore because of your belief. Why don't you curse God and die? And Job said, I can't do it. And then his three friends come along, and I think Job was in that position right there, kneeling down, and I think his prayer and his cry out to God and his pain that he was going through with his physical self and just the agony of losing everything he had, I think it was quite noisy. It would be for me. And his friends come along to visit him, and the Bible says it took them 7 days before they actually spoke to Job. That's the type of torment that the man was in. And when they finally did talk to him, you can go ahead and read it from chapters 3 on. There's this dialogue back and forth. All three of them take a turn, and then Job takes a turn, and then back and forth, and Job's crying out to God. Say, God, hey, it's sort of poetic. It's almost like poetry when you read it. There's pretty cool readings in there. And back and forth and around, and Job is like, God, why aren't you answering me? And finally in chapter 37, he answers him. God finally answers him. And I've been there. I've been there in business. Like, God, what are you doing to me? Why are you not answering my prayers? I'm asking you just to supply enough that I can get by. And some of you have been there in relationships. Some of you have been there in your incredible loss of family. I get it. I understand. And you're asking God, why? And in his time, he will answer you. But this is the beautiful verse, and we're going to close it up and get you guys out here. This is the verse that all of Job, I believe, hinges on. It's a powerful, powerful thing. What did God ask Job to do through all of his brokenness? It's in verse 10 of chapter 42. It says, y'all read it with me. After, I better get to it. After Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. I see this verse as being, and I see Job as being the catalyst of forgiveness. And if we want our lives to matter, and if we want God This whole series, the stained glass series, is about taking broken pieces of our lives and allowing God to make beautiful things with it. I will tell you, Becky and I walked through some major, major forgiveness. And it's only by the grace of God that we could do it. Some of you have to do that very same thing. And I will tell you, you cannot pray for your friend until you've forgiven them. You can't do it. You can't do it. You can't, the prayer hit the ceiling and bounce right back down in your lap. I've done it. And so this morning I was going to get you all to stand, and I was just going to get you know what? We're all friends here, right? How powerful would it be if we would just, to the guy next to us or left or the right or whatever, husband and wife, you know what, just for a few moments, pray for each other? Wouldn't that be awesome? Because it says in the Bible that he restored his things to him after he prayed for his friends. Are we not all friends here? Amen? Now, I know some of your hearts are beating. You're saying, well, Jimmy, I don't want to pray for anybody. You don't have to. We'll pray for you. We've got you covered. That's what friends do. I just thought it would be a powerful thing to practice what Job did. How do you think that prayer went? After all that mockery and pointing fingers, Job, you got to quit, man. God's not real. If he was so real, why would he do this? And he's not even answering you, they were saying in some of the dialogue. Did you guys stand? I don't know how this looks. I have no idea. But you guys prayed for me and Becky this morning, and there's something that happened in me. And I thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I know there were prayers going up that weren't through the mic, and that's fine. I love it. But would you just, if you're husband and wife, if you're single, find somebody. And we're just going to play a little bit of music and get ready for that last song. And it's going to have to be our offering song probably, or y'all want to hear more music? Let's do It Again and the last song. And I want you to just take some time and communicate back and forth with each other. We're going to take a few minutes. Just look at each other. Just, if you don't know him, introduce yourself and say, you know what, is there anything I can pray for you? Because Job did it. Job chapter 42, verse 10, he says, after he prayed for his friends. After he prayed for his friends. So find a friend. Make a friend and pray for that person. Let's just do that.